Now another application for using a void form component modeled in place and the cut tool is to maybe add some interest to the edge of this roof. There's very little we can do to the edge of this flat roof at the moment. We've got rafter cut, and the only other thing we could do is maybe 2 cut plumb or 2 cut square, and then if we wanted a fascia depth on that of say 150 and apply that, then we get kind of something that goes on like that. So it's nothing really exciting going on, but now I've changed the profile edge. The fascia depth is 150. If I just select this and go back to plumb cut and apply, that's going to drop it back down to the way it was. Okay, so we need to have some other bits of information with that 2 cut plumb to make it look interesting, but any sort of chamfer or any sort of special treatment you couldn't really do to this roof with the basic settings. So what I'm going to show you now is how to add some interest to this edge using this component and some of the geometry creating options that we have when we go into the create component. So again, we're going to model in place, and if we drop down to the roof, and again it's not necessarily that essential, but if you've got lots and lots of these things, it's nice to be able to categorize them correctly. And so we can say OK, and we'll call this roof edge trim for the moment, and then OK that, and then we get our set of tools again. And again, I'll use the solid tools and convert this object into a void form, and I'm going to use a sweep option this time. So this is like the follow me tool in SketchUp. It's going to sweep around a path, and we'll pick the edge of the roof as the path. So sweep, and then we start getting into the modify sweep settings. Now we're going to sketch a path or pick a path. We'll pick the path, we just pick the top edge around this roof, so that's going to be our sweep path. And once we've created our path, and it doesn't have to be a closed path, it can go off anywhere, we can say OK. Now the reason I could pick those edges is because I've got this thing selected by default, pick 3D edges, and I'm going to say finish editing that bit. So that's our path done. Now we come to this bit. This is perpendicular to the path, and this is the plane in which we are going to draw our profile. So we can either choose a profile, so they might have profiles that we've already created that we can drop in there, or we can create our own. So by clicking on edit sketch, then we move into sketch mode. Now I might want to go to the back elevation so I can see this square on, so it might be a little bit easier, or you can pick an elevation as well. So if I choose the line tool, now what I'm going to do is draw outside of this, because the bit outside is irrelevant. It's when it cuts in to this is where we'll have our edge of the roof. So if we wanted to extend the roof a little bit more, then we could do that. But if I just say I want my roof to come up and across and up, and then maybe slope up a bit, then have a little nib at that point, then I can come up there, and then just all I'm doing now is creating something that's going to sweep around the outside of the building, but where it intersects with the roof, just click on there, where it intersects with the roof, this bit here, that bit's going to be removed, so I'll end up with a roof edge that kind of looks like this. And then the other great thing about this is that these surfaces become available for applying different trim to as well. So now I've created my profile, I can say OK to that, and then I say OK to the next bit, which is going to basically sweep that profile around the path. So that's that bit done. So I'm not out of it just yet, but this is what I've got. I've got some sort of parapet that it looks like on the outside, but ultimately this is going to be a void form. Currently it is a solid form, so I'm going to select it and make it a void form by clicking on that. So now we see the color change on it, so it highlights it as a void form. Now I can use my cut geometry, so select cut, then I'll make sure I select the roof. Just hover over the edge of it and click, and then I select my void form, void sweep, and click, and that gives me an edge that looks like that. Now I can still click on this and edit it because I'm not completely finished yet. So I could click on that and say edit sweep, and then I go back down the stacks. So this is the path. I could edit the path, or I could edit the profile. But I'm just going to say no to that and finish model, and this gives me a much more interesting edge to the roof. Okay, so that's using the cut method. If I wanted to put a parapet onto this, I could use exactly the same technique, and if I keep this as it is, then I can put a parapet maybe up here and stepping in. Then back to the architecture tab, model in place, again down to the roof. Okay, I'll call this parapet. Okay, there. This is going to be another sweep, and pick edges 1, 2, 3 and 4. The edges are done, so say OK to that, and now this thing becomes highlighted. Again, we'll go with the front view this time. It doesn't matter as long as we're square on. It's nice and easy. And then we can edit profile, and this isn't going to be a void form, this is going to be a solid form, and then we can apply a material to that as well. So this is where it starts, so we'll take my parapet from there. I can come up, say 500 mil, and just pan down, then we'll come out say about 60, then we can come up 40 will do, then we come on an angle of say a few degrees, and then we come back down, I'm guessing the length of this, and then we go 40, and then we can come in like so and come down to there and then back to there. So that's that. Material, we could put the material on it now, and we'll call it brick. Common, that'll do. Okay, finish and finish, and then we've got a parapet that sweeps around the edge of our roof as well, and we can finish the whole thing. So very, very flexible is our component tool, whether it's a adding or whether it's subtracting from an existing surface. Okay, so a very short introduction to that. The possibilities are endless as far as these things go, but if you kind of remember what's going on, it's a path and a profile ultimately. It's just the level of editing that you need to be sort of more aware of. The rest of it is fairly simplistic. Okay, so we've now created a weird looking but interesting sort of roof edge. We're going to move on now to stairs, and we're not going to cover every aspect of stairs because we'll be here for a very long time, but we will look at the basics, and there are two types of stair. There's the component based stair and there's the sketch based stair, and I'll show you the introductions to both of those.